The new Colombo Plan is a signature initiative of the Australian government to increase the number of Australians starting part of their degree in the region, deepening their knowledge and understanding of Indo-Pacific region and building people-to-people ties. In 2016, the Australian government will send more than 5,800 students to 28 locations throughout the Indo-Pacific region, including Vietnam, under the new Colombo Plan's mobility program. Among 28 country options, Vietnam is the 9th largest recipient of the new Colombo Plan students. These students will study a broad range of subjects including business management, agriculture, environmental studies, health, education, and anthropology at various universities and gain experience of Vietnam's workplace through internships with local businesses, including the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, Foreign Trade University, Universities of Economics Ho Chi Minh City, Bạch Mai Hospital, Chợ Rẫy Hospital, and FPT Vietnam.
Hello everyone, welcome to Sharing Vietnam on VTC 10 NetViet. In 2016, nearly 270 Australian students will be coming to Vietnam joining the new Colombo Plan, and that's an increase of 66% compared to this year intake. What makes Vietnam an attractive place for a short studying course and internship that will be shared with the Charge d'Affaires from the Australian Embassy, Mr. LAYTON PIKE. Thank you so much for joining Sharing Vietnam today. What are some highlighted activities of new Colombo Plan in Vietnam?
This year, we've had already over 160 students have the opportunity to be new Colombo Plan participants in Vietnam. Next year, we're expecting over 260. So the plan is well and truly being implemented. And that really goes to the breadth and depth of both the education relationship between Australia and Vietnam, but also the bilateral relationship.
How has Australian students shown their interest about Vietnam, and is there any requirements for these students in order to coming to Vietnam to study?
Thank you for that question, because it allows me to talk about a booklet that we've prepared. It's called Vietnam, a Study Abroad Guide for Australian Students. This booklet provides information on the 40 different universities which are partner universities through the new Colombo Plan, and it allows Australian students to research what institutions might best suit them to come and study at, and hence the opportunities for Australian students to come to Vietnam are very broad and they are increasing. So we're seeing quite a lot of interest from Australian students to come to Vietnam, and a recent survey of the new Colombo Plan showed that everybody who has been a student so far has agreed that the new Colombo Plan is something they would recommend to others and that has been beneficial for themselves. And we're aiming to train the next generation of leaders, and at the heart of it, the new Colombo Plan is about the relationship between Australia and Vietnam. It's about deepening our people-to-people links and deepening our bilateral ties. So through focusing on that next generation, students aged up to 28, at the undergraduate stage, we're hoping we can really further those people-to-people links.
So as you had mentioned, Vietnam is the 9th country that the largest of recipient of Colombo Plan will be coming to. And what makes Vietnam so attractive to those Australian students?
Vietnam is a high priority for Australians as they look across the 38 options of countries. Many Australians have travelled to Vietnam. Many Australians have enjoyed Vietnamese food in Australia, and there's many areas of specialisation in Vietnam where people can study. So it is amongst the countries of most interest to Australian students.
So other than the food or maybe the sightseeing, what kind of features about the learning environment of Vietnam that are especially attractive?
Yes, well, the first thing I'd say is Vietnam has a young population. I think over 60% of the population of Vietnam are in their 30s or less. So there's many similarities with a young population which is increasingly educated, which draws on new and emerging technology. So I think we already have a lot in common. I think there's particular areas in the development of Vietnam, like I mentioned, the Mekong Delta, climate change, salinity, which is of particular interest to some areas of study in Australia, where Vietnam offers experience and education opportunities that nobody else can offer. But also I think more generally people are inspired by the dedication and commitment of Vietnamese students and of the increasing quality of education institutions here, and they like to be able to share in that, to learn some more.
Tom Doyer arrived in Vietnam early this year under the new Colombo plan. Currently, he's studying the Bachelor of Business at HANOI campus of RMIT International Universities of Vietnam. With a desire to study abroad to deepen his vision of the world, he has researched many students' exchange programs. Meanwhile, the new Colombo plan was presented to the students in Melbourne, where he was studying. Opportunity to experience Asia, including range of grants and scholarships for short and long-term study, as well as internships, mentorships, partisans, and research at local universities or businesses really attracted to this young man.
I felt it was the same course content, same teaching standards, but the interaction between students was entirely different for me. And I think that's been my biggest learning curve of how to deal with different types of people. And I'm quite a loud person, quite extroverted, and majority of my friends are as well. But I think here the culture's quite different. So maybe in group situations, people don't necessarily interact the same way as we do back in Melbourne. It's helped me grow immensely, and I don't regret it at all.
Tom Doyer, just like many other new Colombo participants, valued the uniqueness that this learning experience brings.
I think the biggest thing was I'd done a bit of travelling through Asia before, and that's a big part of the reason why I wanted to come back. But this opportunity with the new Colombo plan has enabled me to really find a hub within Asia, and I wanted to do a lot more study and travel around Asia, of the people, the culture and the places. So I think being based in Hanoi has made it really easy to go to other countries like Laos and Cambodia and Thailand and that sort of thing. So it's been really interesting seeing the different cultures like really up close and in person, and learning more about it through the Vietnamese culture as well, like making a few close Vietnamese friends that have explained different things about China and Laos and everything to do with that. So it's been interesting seeing a different background's perspective on everything.
Chúng tôi đã đón sinh viên của Úc sang học tập tại Đại học Hà Nội, và con số đến đây tới nó không nhiều, khoảng vài chục bạn từ các cái trường chẳng hạn như Victoria, The La Trobe sang qua các chương trình trao đổi của chúng tôi. Rồi các bạn ấy có những bạn đã yêu thích quá và quyết định sau khi kết thúc chương trình đào tạo Úc, các bạn ấy sang Việt Nam để học tập và kiếm việc.
Khoa cũng tạo ra các cái môi trường để làm sao mà người học khi mà sang đây tiếp cận rất là nhanh đến các cái văn hóa cũng như là cái sinh hoạt ở bên Việt Nam. Thế trong tương lai thì Khoa sẽ có các cái giải pháp để làm sao để mà hỗ trợ tốt nhất cho người học nước ngoài tại Khoa.
Previously, educational cooperation between Vietnam and Australia mostly encapsulated in bringing Australian education closer to Vietnamese. With Australian students are encouraged and had chosen to study in Vietnam, showed that Vietnamese educational system is increasingly getting appreciated by the world community. As a result, educational partnerships between the two countries is diversified, achieving greater equality.
So how do you view about the interest of the schools and institutes in Vietnam about the new Colombo plan in general, and about the recipient of new Colombo plan that has been coming to their schools and institutes?
I think all the Vietnamese institutions who are part of the new Colombo plan have really appreciated the opportunity. It enriches the institutions in Vietnam, it enriches the other students who are there, it makes for a more international experience. So the feedback we have received from universities in Vietnam has been very positive. Similarly, the feedback we have received from the government of Vietnam has been very positive. When Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dung was in Australia earlier this year, he met with students who had been already in Vietnam. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Minh has spoken in very positive terms of the New Colombo plan. So I think the support is from the highest levels of government, through universities, right down to the peers of the students who are studying.
What about the Australian side? How has they see the growth of the students that came back from Vietnam? What kind of growth that this experience of learning and living in Vietnam has given for them?
Very good question. I think the Australian students who come to Vietnam come back much more enriched. Not only have they, from an educational point of view, learned new things and had new experiences, but from a cultural perspective, their mind has been opened, and that is really at the heart of it, what the New Colombo plan is about. We want the next generation of Australian leaders to understand Asia, to understand our relationships in the region. So I think people are coming back enriched, both personally, professionally and culturally.
So most Australian students coming to Vietnam undertake a short studying course or internship. Why is that so, and would it give the same effect, achieving the objectives of people-to-people tie of the Colombo plan?
I think the best way to achieve people-to-people ties is to have a range of programs for a range of different amounts of time. I think the New Colombo plan so far in Vietnam has more been about the short course, but we will look to expand that into whole semesters, as we do with people from Vietnam that we bring to Australia under the Australia Awards scholarship programs. We do some short courses, we do some semester long, we do some entire degrees.
And what kind of support would Australians provide for the recipient of New Colombo plan?
New Colombo plan is a relationship between institutions and institutions. So Australian universities, there's many which have equities here in Vietnam, are working with universities here in Vietnam. So the role of the embassy is not a direct role in relation to students. Our role is to make sure the New Colombo plan is being implemented, is to work with those students when they come, to meet them, to, for example, invite them to the ambassador's house for a reception, or to just say hello and understand their experience. But really the relationship is between the universities and the universities. And what we think that will do is make sure the relationships are deepened and sustained over time, well beyond any investment we would make.
And how can, from a project like the New Colombo plan, the two countries can promote a more people-to-people ties as well as educational cooperations beyond the New Colombo plan?
Education is the cornerstone of Vietnam bilateral relationships. At any given time we have about 25,000 students studying in Australia. We have over 40,000 alumni of Australia institutions in Vietnam. We have thriving Australian universities operating within Vietnam. So education is already the cornerstone of our relationship. The New Colombo plan is deepening that, and it's in a different direction. It's Australians coming to Vietnam. So I think the results are already sustained. What we're doing is looking at a deepening of an already very special part of our relationship.
Thank you so much for joining Sharing Vietnam today.
Thank you.
And that's the end for Sharing Vietnam today. Thank you so much for watching us. Any questions and recommendations, please email to sharingvietnam@netvittv.net. Thank you and see you again.